Welcome to Cerini Associates 2020 nonprofit update. Try saying that 10 times fast. The firm has been offering this event for at least 10 years, according to Ken Cerini, said 15. We lose track of time. However, this is the first time we're going to be doing this event virtually, so hopefully there won't be too many glitches. It's also the first time that we have 3 different virtual rooms so that you can attend the subject area that you're most interested in. It's one of the pluses about being in the virtual world. So you are currently in Virtual Room B. I am Shari Diamond. I'm a partner at Cerini Associates, overseeing the internal audit department. And joining me virtually is Mr. Kevin Urso, president of Connected Technology, located in St. James on Long Island, near our office. Connected Technology provides managed service offerings and comprehensive cybersecurity services. Welcome, Kevin.
Oh, thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone.
So together we're going to be talking about technology concerns and considerations with going virtual. Some quick housekeeping items. This is Virtual Room B. If you were looking for legal updates, that's in Virtual Room A with the fabulous David Goldstein. And if you just want to hang out and regroup with fellow colleagues and network, that's in Virtual Room C. You can hop in and out anytime you like. We are recording each of the presentations so that if you're torn between 2 time slots, you will have access to listen to them later. On your right side of your screen, I think in the sort of bluish area, you're going to see an opportunity to click on a chat button. There's a poll button. We might be doing some polls later, hopefully, and a Q&A button. So if you have any questions, you could post them there. I see some people saying hello back, and hopefully we'll know the answer for any of your questions. And if not, we're going to leave some time at the end of the presentation. Kevin will be available also at the Q&A panel discussions, which is going to take place at 1 p.m. today. So let's go click the next slide. Some quick intros to the topics of what we're going to be doing and objectives of what we want to cover today. This has been a very strange and difficult time for everyone. And first and foremost, we really hope that everybody is okay, has found ways to navigate through the pandemic, both within the organization and personally. And there's been lots of different experiences. But I think being able to work and communicate virtually has been the key to making it through so far. I kind of think of this happened in the 1980s. Imagine, back when I started my career as a COBOL programmer, don't drop the deck. That will have some reading for some people out there. There was no internet. There were no cellular communications. There were no emails. And while I'm pretty comfortable with technology, I too have been overwhelmed. There's just been so many different platforms for communications between BlueJeans, Slack, Teams, Zoom, Google Meets, Google Hangouts, FaceTime, WebEx, GoToMeetings, even Excel events. Then you have emails, phone texts, and anything else going on during your normal course of your day. You just need an extra set of arms and hands. The fun part about technology is you can make all this happen, but it also breaks, it freezes, and it just doesn't always work the way you want it to. There's a scary part about all this. Technology also introduces lots of security concerns. Back in the 1980s, we had different risks. We had desktops and mainframes, very secure to the desk, very large systems, not so portable. My cell phone, which I call my mini handheld computer that happens to make phone calls, has more computing power, memory, and speed than my desktop did like in 1986. So we've come a long way, baby. Using technology to communicate means sending data and information over the airwaves and pipes, and this has created a whole new job industry called hacking. It is a full-time job with paid benefits, believe it or not. And we are using devices that are very small and portable, and that makes their job easier. So we have a lot of smart objects out there. We put the word smart on a lot of objects like phones, whiteboards, HVAC systems, doors, thermostats, you name it. However, the users themselves are not always so smart. So vigilance is key, and you're going to see that's what Kevin's going to be going through. As an internal auditor, it's important to understand how technology adheres to internal controls. That's where we're going to talk about the information flow and internal control considerations, policy, procedures. Well, those are your first line of defense. And then we'll go into the more technical stuff about securing your workspace and strategies for working smarter and safer with technology. We also have a little plus benefit bonus about good news for nonprofits from discounts using Microsoft 365. So real quickly about objectives of internal controls. It's important to understand how technology and internal controls have to be properly aligned. I'm a CIA. That stands for Certified Internal Auditor. If you don't like me, well, you can come up with your own definition for those letters. Basically, I'm called a risk assessor, or somebody that looks to reduce risks, reduce opportunities for fraud, helps organizations become more efficient and effective. And there's basically three parts of an internal audit: financial, compliance, and operations. So you're going to see when we talk about accurate financial information, it allows you to be forward-thinking, make decisions that align with your mission. It's really important that that information is correct and up-to-date and accurate. You need financial reporting for your grants, for your loans, insurance, and donations. Policies and procedures, these dictate your company expectations for running the organization and how your employees and board can operate. The rules, some are internal that you're going to create with your policies. Some are externally driven, such as regulatory, federal, and state laws. Operations, well, that's how we do business, and it's how we ensure it adheres to proper oversight, the safeguarding of assets, and how we effectively and efficiently are working and how we meet the goals of the organization. If you're not in compliance with your laws, rules, regulations, fines, lost opportunities for future funding possibly. Inefficiencies, well, that's a waste of dollars. So it all comes down to dollars. So what do internal controls do? You have to meet the three objectives of internal audits. And technology is what you're using to communicate those three objectives. So you want that efficiency and effectiveness. You want the ability to have correct financial reporting, and you want to ensure that you're in compliance with laws, rules, and regulations. Why are they important? You're going to see a cute picture of my late doggy, Tucker. He was a good boy. Well, internal controls are important because they set the expectation of behavior within the organization. It's the tone from the top, tone at the top. And how do we do all this is through communication. And how do we communicate now? We're doing this through some platform of technology. I'll flash it forward about a little bit more about information and communication. It's the most important part of any relationship. I think we all know that, whether it's work, family, or personal. In businesses, we need to ensure that the information is complete and accurate and able to be delivered to the appropriate stakeholder. In this pandemic, this has certainly been challenging for many of us. We look at how we're going to achieve the effective communication, and it has to flow all throughout the organization. That is something that's been, I think, the biggest challenge with working virtually. So when we talk about information flow and internal controls, this is the starting point. You have to know what kind of data you have and what data is critical to your organization, to your mission. What will make or break your organization if that data gets corrupted, gets in the hands of bad people? And I also like to tell people to think of your data like it's your child. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Do you know where your data is? Do you know where it's living? Do you know who it plays with? You certainly wouldn't send your child out to someone's house to have a play date if it wasn't a safe and secure place. So you wouldn't do that with your data. You shouldn't do that. You should think of it the same way. Also, if it's on your cloud, it's still your data. It's still something that you have to maintain and keep control over. So you have to know who's accessing it. Is it being kept secure? How's your data capturing change from remote working? How are you effectively getting this data to flow through your organization, the communication with working virtually? Then you have to think about your key processes. These are your key business processes. You might maybe have established strong internal controls when working in the office. Well, did you transfer those controls over when working virtually? Those are the questions that you have to ask. And do they work? Like some products, some packages, applications may not really work great virtually. CAD programs, our tax software program doesn't work great. So it makes some very, very difficult decisions and challenges, and you have to make sure that you're staying within the controls that you always had in place, and you have to mimic those in some way, shape, or form virtually. So policies and procedures. Everybody seeing the slides okay? I'm hoping so far so good. Some of you should have many of these policies already. Acceptable use, and it should have included some type of working remote aspect in your policy there. Data confidentiality is really important. You really want to be able to understand and define what kind of data you need to protect. That's going to be important because all this protection costs money. Remote access, think of not only for your users, for your staff and your employees, think about vendors and your clients or consumers. Who are you interfacing with? Who's using your systems? And how are they doing them remotely? Backup and recovery, again, these should have been in place beforehand. We've had some tests like this before in the past. I would say Superstorm Sandy was a really good litmus test of how We have to be able to be resilient and respond to a disaster. This is a different type. It's forcing us to work remotely. Again, you have to make sure that you have the right backup and recovery procedures in place. That's really also important for hackers as well. Security breach and notification, many are required to have this kind of a policy in place. And social media, this is kind of a new thing that has come on the horizon. We've seen a lot going on with social media, and we very heavily, quickly, when people spread their message, with social media. It has a very wide outreach. By the way, job recruiting, what we do too, we troll social media sites for people that are applying for a job here. I just was told by another colleague, college admission staff, they're looking at an applicant's past 5 years on the web. So you want to encourage good digital citizenship. And documentation is key. If you don't have these procedures documented, with this remote work environment, it's not just we have to work remotely. Some people may not be able to work remotely. Some people may have to be caring for somebody sick. Somebody might be sick themselves. People have children at home now. It's a very different dynamic environment. So we have to make sure that the right oversight of those key procedures is happening and is still taking place even in a virtual environment. So that comes through cross-training, documentation, literally documenting everything, the processes that you have in place. My rule is no one person should take down the organization. So we're going to cue some scary music now, because now we're going to go into what's called cybersecurity threats. Oh my. This is where Kevin's going to speak about, because he knows a lot about this. Cybersecurity threats are on the rise. He's unfortunately very familiar with these things, and he's going to walk us through phishing emails, malware, and scams. Oh my! And then he'll talk about cybersecurity threats and challenges you're seeing. So Kevin, I leave it to you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Sherry. Good morning, everyone. So I wanted to spend a few minutes. We'll talk about what has changed in cybersecurity since the pandemic started. We'll kind of look back at some things that you should have been doing anyway. I'll give you some examples as to what we're seeing, how people are getting caught. And then we're going to go through some best practices, like a top 10 list of things you should be doing to help reduce your risk. And I say reduce your risk because you could do everything perfectly and still have a cyber attack or still have an event. Really, what you're trying to do with cybersecurity is, not leave the front door wide open, make it a little bit more difficult for the attacker to get to you and move on to the next person. Because chances are, at some point, you are going to have some type of breach or attack. So, before the whole pandemic started, we were hearing in the news probably every week there was some type of breach. You heard this company got ransomware, this data got exposed. It was a pretty common occurrence you heard in the news. But you couldn't think it got any worse. But after the pandemic started, the hackers took advantage of that fear of the quick change that everyone had to make, working in the office, now you're working at home. They took advantage, and we're seeing a huge increase in cybersecurity threats. And the numbers are all over the board. So you see here, Checkpoint, they're saying they see 200,000 coronavirus-related cyber attacks, which was a 30% increase. A security manager at HP, he's saying globally, he's seeing a 600% increase in attacks. So I think we can just all agree it's increasing a lot. We're seeing a lot of events with the WHO. Everyone's watching that in the news. They're saying they saw, they had their password leaked. They had 450 active emails leaked out on the internet. So what that allows hackers to do is kind of steal that information and impersonate those organizations. They're seeing a 5 times increase in the number of attacks against WHO than they did last year. And Google is saying they're seeing 18 million daily phishing attempts related to coronavirus. So we're definitely seeing a spike, and the attackers are taking advantage of this. So cybersecurity challenges. one of the main ways that an organization will be attacked is by a fake email, what we call phishing. So phishing can come in many different forms, and I have some examples I'll show you on the next couple of slides. But basically, phishing is it's going to try to fool you to click on a link, to open an attachment, or simply do something like making an ACH transfer or some type of banking transaction. It doesn't have to be a very sophisticated attack. Quick story: we had an organization contact us about 2 weeks ago in a panic. They transferred $65,000 out to a hacker. They did an ACH payments. They did 3 payments. And you say, how does someone do something like that? And when we dig in and we start to look at what happened, it really wasn't a very sophisticated attack, but they played on what they knew about the company. So what happened was they gained access to the company's Office 365 account. What they did was they had found one of the owners' email addresses and password posted online because he happened to use the same password over and over, for all his websites. They got into the Office 365 account, took over, and they noticed, hey, they're getting emails about making payments. And some of those emails had ACH routing numbers on them. So what they did is they intercepted those emails, changed the number by a couple numbers, and when they made payments, it went to the hacker rather than the organization they were trying to pay. That went on for about a month until one day someone called and said, I haven't gotten your payment. They said, what are you talking about? We paid you. And it all blew up. So they lost $65,000 in transfers, a ton of consulting work to try to figure out what happened, to fix it all. So it can be a very costly mistake. Other methods are, social media, Facebook, all these websites. They have pop-ups on them that have malicious software. You have to be really careful what you click on. You have to kind of take a pause before you ever click on anything. You have to pause and say, does this make sense? Is this something I really need to open or run? And the problem especially for non-for-profits and for small businesses, is they really don't have the sophisticated security systems in place. Maybe they have one good firewall, or maybe. Yeah.
Continue with your cyber.
So what I was saying was, small organizations need to be careful. Basically, they are the low-hanging fruit. They may not have the security in place. They may not have the layers of the security to protect them. You can move on to the next slide, Sherry.
Okay, sure, sorry. You get the phishing emails, yep.
Right. So here's an example of a phishing email. Sometimes they're really, really obvious. This is a kind of obvious one. You notice here, you get a lot of these from Office 365 because you get an email saying, hey, your Office 365 account's going to be shut down. You're not going to get email anymore. Click on here to fix it. Click on here to contact your administrator. This one's pretty easy. You notice it's from Office. It's saying it's from Office 365, but if you look up at the from, it's a totally different address. If you hover over these links, they wouldn't be going to Microsoft. There's typos in here. The phone number is missing a number. This one's pretty simple. Can you move on to the next one, Sherry?
Sure.
Now, this is the one that kind of something like this catches more people. So this is maybe an email that comes from like your human resources department, comes from the owner of the company, comes from the board, and it says, hey, do something. So they're playing on the hierarchy in your organization. Get this done right away. I need it today. Of course, you want to make that person happy. You go to do it. You click on this link. It either installs some malware on your computer, or it does something. It asks you to transfer money. This is a very common exploit, and not very complicated, but it just it plays on the user's emotions. Hackers use like I said before, how I explained that other company got attacked, they use information that's available out on the dark web. So the dark web is kind of like another internet. It's an unsearchable internet. You can only search it if you have certain tools to be able to go on there and look around. And the dark web, you can go on, you can buy a list of username and passwords. And they get these username and passwords from the breaches you hear about. You know, like when LinkedIn was breached and they got into that database and they got all the email addresses and the passwords. They use that. That's why it's very important to use a different set of credentials, username and passwords, every single website that you log into. Because you don't want the hacker to be able to buy your username and password and then be able to log into your Office 365 or online system. Other type of scams are, getting cut off there, give me one sec. So app scams, we're seeing a lot of, you know, mobile apps. Right now with coronavirus, there are a lot of charity scams, you know, donate money to this. Treatments, you know, click on this link to learn about the new treatment. PPE type scams, you know, when you're trying to get masks, you're trying to get hand sanitizer, all this stuff. Click on this link and we have it for this price. So we're seeing a lot of scams that are focused towards COVID. Okay, we'll move on to the next one, Sherry.
Okay.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Investment scams. So, you know, you never want to be putting in information like your social security number. We're seeing scams about coronavirus testing. So if you can think of it, they're coming up with that type of email or that type of attack. Go ahead, Sherry, move on to the next one, please. So this was an interesting one. So these people, they set up a website where you can go online and click to see, you know, how is the virus spread doing in your area. But when you actually clicked on the link, it embedded some malicious code onto your computer that allowed them remote access to your computer. So it's just another example of the length they'll go to. Go ahead, Jerry.
So this is where the fun part is. We're going to cue the happy music at the end.
Right. So I'm going to talk, the next slide, we're going to talk about some things you should be doing for your network in general, but let's talk about specifically what you need to do with your people working from home, because that was a quick change, right? Everyone one day was working in the office, next day they're all working from home. You had to scramble to make it work. So you need to make sure that those people working from home have changed their Wi-Fi, the default Wi-Fi passwords on their home routers. So typically when you buy a router at home, you know, from Best Buy or wherever, it comes with a built-in Wi-Fi password that you can look up online. So you want to make sure that was customized and changed. Same thing with the router password. You want to make sure that that password has been changed. The reason I say that's important is these computers now that are working from home have a connectivity into your office. So if they can breach the home network, get onto that laptop, chances are they're going to be able to get into your servers and your central, you know, network back in the office and take control of it. You got to make sure that those machines, those home machines are updated regularly. When I say updated, that means the Microsoft patches, the Adobe patches, all the application updates that are supplied. You got to make sure they're using a virtual private network. So virtual private network, basically think of it as a tunnel to your office, and it's secure. So you're sending your traffic over the internet, but no one can read it. If you're not using a VPN, when you send that information across the internet, everyone can see it and access it, basically. This is a tough one, but you really want to separate your private hardware from your corporate or your organization hardware. So what that means is you really want to have you want to give your employees a corporate laptop or a corporate computer. You don't want them using the same computer they use at home, the kids play games on and all that type of stuff. You want to use multi-factor authentication. And that is basically when you log in, it asks you for another code. I'm going to pop up a little poll real quick here. And let's see if everyone sees that. Just going to want to get a feeling for how many people use multi-factor. I'll continue on while you guys answer that. You want to have a corporate policy in place for file sharing. Where are you going to be saving these files? Are they saved in OneDrive where you can get to them as an organization, or are they saving on their laptops? And when that laptop dies, you're going to lose all your files. You want to monitor the data that's going in and out. What's leaving. You want to have some monitors in place so if something's going wrong, if someone has breached your network. And this is another hard one. You don't want the users to have administrative privileges on the computers, which is even harder if you're using their personal computer. Because how do you take away their administrative rights if it's a personal computer? Okay. Go ahead and next one. All right. Now, these are kind of general. These are like my top 10 list. Things you got to do on your network. These are, and typically organizations are not good at doing all these on a regular basis. But these are things you must do. So you got to have a rock solid backup and business continuity system. And what that means is you need to test it all the time. You need to make sure that when something happens, that backup is actually going to work and you know how to do it. That's where people usually fail. They run in a backup every night, but they have no idea if it's going to work when they need it. You got to have continuous employee training. And when I say continuous, it's not do a training, once a year and come back to it next year. What we found is that's okay to do, but what you really need is that once a year training, and then like weekly or bi-weekly reminders, little micro trainings that say, hey, remember, don't click on the link. Remember, this is how people get you. That's what seems to be the most, works the best. You need to have a very good firewall. So what we call a next generation firewall, which has intrusion prevention systems, malware filters built into it. It's not like a little home firewall that you buy at, the Best Buy or all these, stores. You need to have a strict password policy. I know everyone hates this, but you got to have a password, numbers, special characters. It's got to change all the time. It's very, very important. You got to have someone monitoring the security logs. What we find is companies that have been breached, they are typically breached for months before they even know anything's wrong. So the attackers in the network siphoning out information, collecting data, figuring out when to hit you is going to hurt the worst. So when they ask you for the ransom, you're going to pay it because they don't even know they're in the system. Okay, so you need some way to know that someone has entered the system, illegally. You got to have a third-party audit done, at least annually. So someone to come in, review what are your systems, what are your policies. We talked about this one before. Make sure that you're updating all the software, all the plugins for your software. So those are the Microsoft updates that you hear about. Every 2 weeks, there's a bunch of them. The list is getting longer and longer. Every 2 weeks, it's 30 critical updates, 40 critical updates. Very important to keep that up to date consistently, and that's the key with that one. It's got to be consistent. You got to have a really good malware and antivirus software. Again, don't allow personal devices on your network that haven't, and if you do, they got to be really checked and cleaned. But I would highly recommend not to have personal devices on your network. And again, the admin credentials is a big one. I know this is another pain for people. You want to install your software and you don't have admin credentials, it stops you. But not having admin admin credentials is also going to stop the attacker when they get you to download that link. It's going to put the pause in there that we need. Okay. Go ahead, Sherry.
Right.
Next one.
So right before we get to the last slide, which is about Microsoft 365 and some goodies for nonprofits, just curious, we talk about like what data might be attractive to a hacker that a nonprofit would have. What do you think? Why would a cyber criminal attack a nonprofit? What kind of information do they have that might be?
So you may have a database with a lot of contacts. Like I said before, you may have, you could be a really good stepping stone, right? So you could have board members, you could have people you who are used to talking to you that they want to get to. So,
Right.
you know, I want to get to this big company. They have all this security in place. Why go head to head against that when I can kind of come in the back door through this company that doesn't really have much in place? And that's what they do.
Right, right. I'm just curious, did people have a chance to respond to the poll?
I'm seeing, I see it open, but I don't see if it doesn't show me the results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to
Maybe I'll
click
figure
it.
that out. I'll figure that out. Maybe when I come back at 1, I can
Yeah.
give the answer to that.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So bringing it home, perfect timing. Microsoft 365 for nonprofit updates, nonprofit rather. You want to talk about what?
Right. Yeah. So this is a really good program for nonprofits. So M365 is a offering that Microsoft has. It includes your email, your Office suite, but it also has a lot of the security features that I was talking about built into there. And what they're doing for nonprofits is they're giving the first 10 users for free, and then after the 10 users, it's only $5 per additional user per month. So it's usually like a $20 per user price tag on that. So it's a really good kind of one-stop place to get a lot of your security in shape. Now there is a process you have to go through with Microsoft to kind of verify that you're a nonprofit. So if you want, you can send me an email. I'll send you a ebook. It talks a lot about what M365 is, the benefits of it, and then I can help you get certified with Microsoft as a nonprofit, and then you could sign up for the free accounts.
Great. I had just heard back from one of our participants that from the poll, about 75% are showing that they do not use, I think multi-factor authentication was your question, correct?
Yeah.
Especially if they're Google-based,
yes,
that's a problem.
Yeah, so multi-factor authentication is a really easy, it's an easy tool to implement. It's not very expensive, and it really goes a long way. It's not the golden bullet. Nothing is in cybersecurity, but it, you know, if one of your users clicks on an email and it's trying to log into like your Office 365 or your application, the two-factor authentication is going to pop up another piece of information that they need to enter in, and it may stop that. So it goes a very long way for protecting you. I think it's well worth it.
And I guess if an application itself doesn't give you the option to use multi-factor authentication, what's the next best thing that you would say to people that they should be doing?
I mean, if the application itself doesn't have it, what I would do is have it on the login to the computer. So when you log into your computer, you should have, you know, the two-factor kick in. You should also have it on every critical app, like your email. If your management system has the ability to, a lot of the newer systems are adding it, you know, or even older systems are adding it in. New systems have it already.
Right.
It is a very, very effective tool.
And also just to mention about public Wi-Fi, you know, I think before this hit where we had to obviously separate and stores were closing, so we didn't have the ability to go into a Starbucks and sit there, but things are starting to open up again. And if you're working using a public Wi-Fi environment, that's like as good as you shouting out stuff as far as I'm
Yeah.
right
So
now. So
it's so simple. Anyone can do it. You download a small little app on your computer. You go to a Starbucks, you launch that app, and if you're not using a VPN, you can see everything that's going across. So when you type your password in, it's right there. It comes right across the screen.
right.
Don't need a lot of skills to do it. You download these apps for free. There's directions on how to do it online. Very, very simple.
Right.
That's the other thing that's happening too. We're seeing a lot of, you got these advanced hackers, right, who are going after, they're really good programmers. They're really good at what they do. But there's also, you go on the dark web, I can rent a malware system for 3 hours. And I can say, hey, I want to attack company A. I rent the system. I have no computer skills. It sends out the emails, and then if someone clicks on it, I get the payment. So it's become like this point and click type crime that people can do.
Yeah, it's very attractive. And like I said, it is a full-time job. I know in Russia, I was told that, I mean, they get absolutely paid benefits, time off, the whole thing, and they just sit there, you know, trolling away, trying to hack out. And that malware map that we had showed previously, I mean, that some of that stuff that where they're mimicking, you know, the Who's, not the band, but the Who, these, you know, their sites of what you can click on. I mean, they just, they sell for like hundreds, a couple $100. I mean, they're nothing.
Right.
For the payback that they're going to get back on it.
Yeah, no, the reason people are doing this is that they're getting paid very well. You know, you remember some of the news stories. People were paying, you know, $100,000 easily. You know,
right.
And you know, think about it: a $50,000, $100,000 payment for some small organizations. That's enough to put you out of business.
Right.
You know, and if you aren't doing those top 10 things that I told you about, when you try to apply for your cyber insurance, there's a good chance they're not going to pay it, because there's outs in that policy that says if you're not backing up, we're not going to pay. If you're not, you know, if you don't have a good firewall in place, we're not going to pay. So you really have to review those policies as well. Right,
exactly. Yeah. There was a question about Microsoft 365. Does it include Power BI? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I can take a look and get back to you on that one.
Sure. Any other things you're seeing to, you know, new that are coming out, defending, new strategies on helping organizations to protect themselves?
Honestly, there's nothing new and fancy. You know, when we see the attacks happen, it's because they're not following those basic steps. I would say 90% of small to medium organizations don't do those 10 things well. That's really the problem. If you do those 10 things really, really well all the time, you're in pretty good shape. You know, if they're out to get you, they're probably going to get you anyway.
Right.
Know? But you're not going to get the drive-by, you know, type of attack.
Exactly right. And I think some people have to also realize you know, when you're a nonprofit organization, it depends what you're doing, but you might have client or consumer information too. You may be in the Medicaid, Medicare spectrum. You know, that really, you know, has a lot of interest for hackers. Medicare information, medical information, any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
They really take advantage of that. So it's not just
if you're in the financial space at all, medical, you know, then you have other regulations too. So now you have a whole nother set of problems, because now you have a HIPAA breach.
Exactly.
You need to now report that you've had the breach, which is bad press. You know, it's a bad situation all around.
Right. There's another question. We're almost out of time. Does Microsoft have a nonprofit cloud?
So the Office 365 does include some storage, you know, cloud storage. It also includes SharePoint. So I don't know if that would be a fit for what they're looking for. Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure what they mean by cloud. It depends on what they're trying to do. But
well, Microsoft 365 in itself, maybe you want to talk real quickly about what it is. You know, as far as
Microsoft 365. So if you go back, you know, 5-10 years ago, you used to run your own Exchange server, your own mail server. Microsoft 365 is kind of like Google. Think of it as Google email on the Microsoft side. It also gives you the whole Office suite, so your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, all that. But it also has, Teams built in there. Teams is similar to what we're doing now, a way to do a conference call, a way to collaborate. So that's a great tool. People have really used that heavily during the pandemic. It has SharePoint in there. SharePoint is kind of like a company. Think of it as a company portal where you could go in there. It's like a company website where you can put documents and share documents. So it has all those tools, and it's a monthly subscription. And the advantage of the M365 is they've also given you a bunch of security tools in there too. So it's kind of a one-stop. They've kind of put a bundle together for nonprofits.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Anybody have any other questions, thoughts, considerations before we have to end this section of the webinar? Kevin, you're going to be on again at 1 o'clock. There's a roundtable. There's a couple of discussions coming on up ahead. So you'll have an opportunity to. This is being recorded. The slides, hopefully you got them. And if there's any information, our contact information is on the screen in front of you right now. Please feel free to reach out. And we hope that you continue to navigate safely and everybody stay healthy and well. All right.
Great.
Take care. Best.
All right. Thank you so much.